Hello and welcome to the Trimble SX10 Scanning Total Station webinar. Thank you for joining. My name is Ian Guest. I am the Marketing Manager here at Korec. I am the host today. I'll be handing you over to Chris Harris, our Strategic Sales Manager, who'll be providing the presentation. Okay, Chris?
Thank you, Ian. Hello everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us. We haven't done a webinar, I haven't done a webinar for quite some time, but we thought we would dust off the webinar room here at Huntingdon and begin again, because the SX10 has been a very popular product, and we wanted to spread the message a little bit more. So this webinar is aimed at both people who have not seen the SX10 before and people who have, and we also have a couple of customers who already have an SX10 joining us. Thank you for that as well. So I'll try and keep it interesting for all people who are watching, and as we go, if you have any questions, just type them into the box and we will answer them at the end of the webinar. Also today, as part of viewing the webinar, you will have an opportunity to win a trip to the Trimble factory. We'll be pulling out of the hat at the end of the webinar one lucky viewer who will be going to see where the SX10s are made, which is very good. So without further ado, let's begin. So I'll try and skip past the tech stuff fairly quickly, but I will cover the basic system overview, the scanning and the photo side of the SX10, and then move fairly swiftly onto real-world sort of applications and projects to try and keep things a bit more interesting as we go. So not just Korec are celebrating a 50-year anniversary this year of being in business, but some pretty funky technology anniversaries as well, and technologies that are most applicable to what we're looking at today with the SX10. So it's actually 70 years this year since Jodmeter had the first field test of the first EDM prototype, believe it or not, and it's 25 years since the first commercially available scanner was put in production by a company called Mensi. And both these companies are now forming part of Trimble, and a lot of this technology, although it's very old, the improvements over the years of what's gone into the making up of the Trimble SX10. So it's really been the holy grail, if you like. It's been the most common question posed to Korec and Trimble over the last sort of 10 years. When are we going to have a proper scanning total station? When are we going to do it? And it's been a tricky one to come up with. 10 years ago we released the Trimble VX, which was sort of first stab at it, if you like, but at 15 points a second you wouldn't really call it a laser scanner, and certainly not a laser scanner capable of doing full 360 scans or anything like that. Fine if you're doing a long range structure perhaps, but very limited for other things. And then from the scanning side of things, we've really wrestled with the size of them. Even the TX8, it's 1 million points a second, great laser scanner, very, very accurate, but it's quite a beast. And you think about putting that technology in the telescope of a total station would be extremely hard, and it is. And Trimble have had to come up with some very clever technologies to make it possible. So here it is, the SX10. It's a truly innovative piece of equipment, and not only does it scan, it surveys, it's a total station, it's a full imaging system, there's 5 cameras in it. There's no need for an eyepiece now, we don't look through it, it's a total station that we don't look through, so it's very different. It's a complete digital camera operation, which is new to everyone. It also has a camera plummet. We don't have an optical plummet or a laser plummet anymore. We have a camera plummet, which is more accurate and has other benefits as well. And really, in many ways, it's the first of its kind. And once you use it, it's a total pleasure to use. sort of a bit scary at first to a surveyor to think about using a total station without an eyepiece. But once you use it, it really does spoil you for using anything else. We've tried to keep it very familiar. It runs off Trimble Access, which is exactly the same field software as you would get with an S-Series robotic or an R-Series GPS. But due to the technology that's in this, it makes it a very versatile instrument. You know, we can scan, we can survey, we can do both together. We can take brilliant site documentation with the excellent cameras that are on board, and we can do a lot more besides, so it's a very clever machine. So Trimble very clearly set out to make the ultimate site machine, you know, in many ways. The instrument that can be used as effectively as a scanner as it can a total station, and they were developing this over a period of 5 years, so there's a lot of R&D and a lot of hard work that's gone into this, and it does show when you use the system and when you see some of the technology. As we see on the right there, you know, a scanner can sometimes be left in the office. If you haven't got a scan job, then it can sometimes be left behind, whereas a total station is pretty much used every day on site, and that's what we want to do with the SX10. Something that you can use every day. If you have scan jobs, fine. If you have traditional survey tasks, absolutely fine. But much more than that, this system will correct for atmospherics, coordinate systems, scale factor corrections, which is, you know, unique really in terms of laser scanners. You can scan during a survey, so as you're doing a traverse or while you're doing a resection, traditional survey setups, meaning you do not need to register your scans together afterwards, and surveyors understand it straight away. Even if you've not used a scanner before, you can pick up an SX10 if you understand what control is. And then there's some other clever things such as integrated survey and multitasking, which we'll come on to. And so not to dwell too much on the specification of the machine, just to highlight the fact that it's a very top-end spec. So it allows you flexibly to take on any type of work you want. You know, 1 second, you can do monitoring with it, you can do pretty much everything. The long-range scanning, 600 meters scanning range is very handy, and you can really play around with the density of the scan as well, because it's a total station, and you don't necessarily need to do 360 scans all the time because you're already set up. You don't need to register your scans together. We can start to really bring down the scan densities to a very fine point spacing, because perhaps we're not doing 360s like that. We will just take certain areas. So the point resolution can get down as low as 6 millimeters distance between the points at 50 meters away, which is even better than our Trimble TX8 laser scanner. So the system overview is essentially the SX10 total station, the Trimble tablet, and running Trimble Access in the field software, and all the standard robotic accessories that you would normally get with an S-Series kit from Trimble, and then a choice of software. Really, Trimble Business Centre is our main port of call for survey software. Really, everything from a digital level to a UAV can be bought in nowadays to TBC, and now with the SX10 we can start to do an awful lot with the point cloud as well. But we still have Trimble RealWorks if you want to do more niche operations, such as modeling or meshing, or maybe a surface to model inspection, something along those lines. So we have more advanced tools available in Trimble RealWorks as well. So just to touch on the scanning in particular. Now, really, this is the clever bit. This is the bit that Trimble have come up with to allow the possibility of laser scanning inside a telescope of a total station, and we call it band scanning. So the little animation, which hopefully is coming across through the internet to you, is a top-down view of what's happening inside the SX10, and in front of the laser before it comes out is a little deflection prism which flicks the beam 16 ways across. So as we take a line up or we take a line down and measuring in the field, we're not measuring in one line, we're measuring in 16 lines altogether, and that allows us to move horizontally much less, because we don't need to measure anywhere near as many times, and it allows us the speed to laser scan in the field quite comfortably. So what it looks like, in a sense, is this. The instrument will rise up one line like this, and then go across and go down again, but it's not measuring in one line, it's measuring in 16 lines. So we're creating a nice grid very, very quickly. Again, take this structure as an example. That's sort of 10 lines, but as you can see, would be many, many more points than that. So it allows you to capture, everything you want to, or only what you need. By that I mean, traditionally with a laser scan, you would do 360 scans as a matter of course, for two reasons. Firstly is speed. Normally with a laser scan, you do a 360 scan, and then perhaps you might zoom in on a particular window and maybe lift up the density of that area. And also you need to do 360 scans just to register your scans together afterwards. But with the SX10, because you don't need to do that, you don't need to necessarily take 360 scans. So take the top image as an example, the Angela North structure. I just set a little polygon around that, a few minute scans either side, and job done. It was done with using a resection of coming off common control points, front and back face, and the data footprint was so small that I could actually email that raw job file to colleagues. It was something like 23 megabytes. Now that is unheard of with laser scanning, and just one of the many benefits really with the SX10. So it really is how many points you need. You guess you can do full dome 360 scans by 300 degrees vertically. Horizontal band scans are very useful outdoors. It will still allow you to do a 360, but all you do is sort of point the SX10 up to maybe the highest roof that you want to pick up, and it will just miss out the sky. And then if you do that, it will generally bring the scan time down to maybe 6 or 7 minutes to do the 360. And then if there's more important stuff, then you can, again, draw a rectangle around something or draw a polygon around something, and maybe say lift up the resolution of that area. Now this is probably the best bit of the SX10 in total. The fact that we're coming off normal survey control that surveyors understand straight away. We don't need to install scanning control, no need for checkerboards or spheres or anything like that. You can still use them if you want to, but you certainly don't need to. And not only are we coming directly off survey control, but all of our traditional survey adjustments that we're used to, traversing, network adjustments, resections, etc., apply. So we don't need to mess around in the office afterwards registering anything. We can just download, colorize the data if we want to, and begin working. Now, the SX10 has 4 different levels of density: a coarse, a standard, a fine, and a super fine, and it gives you a different point density depending on what you want to pick up. Now, the way it does it is it will do one pass to begin with, and then it will go back over itself and do another pass. Now, this is really useful especially in situations like this where you've got a busy road, and you can see on the image on the right, there's a lot of noise in the road. There's cars, there's people walking in front as well, but the elevation is still nice and tidy. There's no car-shaped holes in that elevation, and that's just one scan, but it's a multiple pass. So it would be a standard, maybe a 4-minute scan or something like that of that elevation, and as the cars are in different places, we've got nice consistent data on that elevation. You can pause and resume your scans, which is really useful. We've had this in our scanners for quite a while. If something pulls in the way and you don't want it there. But it's much more useful in the SX10 because the SX10 is not just a scanner. I always use the example of a topographic survey. You can set up your SX10, measure your back site, Then maybe you walk over to set up your next legs for your next target. While you're doing that, you might as well get it to scan, because why not? By the time you've got back to it, especially if it's a longer scan, perhaps it's still going, you could pause it at this point and measure some line work, do some measurements, take down your backside again, and then resume the scan at that point. So you can be quite flexible with how you work. So we've done a lot of work with the SX10. It's been officially available for sale since the start of the year, but was released last October, and it's been tremendously popular for a number of reasons. Firstly, it's a very tough machine. Both those top two scans there were done in the pouring rain. The range is fantastic. We spec it at 600 meters, but it's got a hard limit of 1 kilometer. And if you look at that image at the bottom right, that's me set up over the A43 here. And from end to end, that is 2 kilometers of scan data. Obviously, fairly sparse at the extremities, but you can do it if you want to. The fact you don't register your scans probably is the nicest thing about the SX10, and what people really like more than ever. And I'll come on to integration with GPS and also the combination with the images. And really, this little quote is a nice one. I grabbed it off the internet, but one of the nicest things, especially if you're doing topographic work or something like that with the SX10, you can continue on working as you've always done with your total station, but then you can scan, just a quick scan, just to capture stuff. Saves site revisits and things like that. Just another nice added feature with the SX10. Okay, imaging. Imaging is very important to Trimble. Trimble have done an awful lot with imaging, not just taking photos in the field for convenience and to have a look at what's going on, but also to measure from photogrammetrically afterwards. And the SX10 is no different, and takes it to a new level, if you like. So firstly, we have a total of 5 cameras in here. 3 we use for looking through and for sort of visual pointing, if you like. And then we have a plummet camera for setting up over known points. And also the 5th camera is our auto lock camera, which is used to track prisms and targets. So the 3 cameras, just to show you where they are, that we use for looking through and taking photos of what the SX10 can see are here. The overview, the primary, and the telescope camera, and they're all 5 megapixel cameras, but they're at completely different sort of focal length zooms, essentially, and completely different field of views. So you get a very different perspective from looking in the different 3, and they're treated as one camera, if you like, on the tablet, which I will show you. Now, as I said, no eyepiece. You don't look through the SX10, as you can see at the back. There's no eyepiece. There's no screws at the side of the instrument to turn it left or right. It's all done on the tablet, and you can. What you see there is what the SX10 is looking at 340 meters away from the device. So in comparison with looking through 30 magnification optics, what you would be used to, the SX10 can take it all the way up to 84. And we're at zoom level 6 of 8 here, which is already beyond normal telescope range, just about. So you can see, you can point very accurately with the SX10. We don't just point the instrument with the SX10. We do a lot of other things as well. It's very useful to point the instrument with the cameras, and again, it's one of the things probably people get their head around to begin with the SX10, but once they have, they're very pleased. You can get more precision this way. At full zoom, 1 click left or right moves it 1 pixel at a time if you want to move precisely, and that's 1 second of arc. So it's very precise and allows for a very rapid response. If you're taking an elevation, some reflectorless shots, you can zoom through exactly which levels of the camera you want. It allows you to do it very quickly. You can take site documentation with the cameras, you can colorize the point cloud, of course, and you can also take measurements afterwards in the software with the photos that we're taking. just to give you an idea of the quality of the photographs, and also the size of the EDM footprint of the SX10. It's the smallest EDM footprint Trimble have ever done, the smallest on the market as far as I'm aware. So this is what you see in the field. This is your tablet data logger essentially, and you see the live feed of whichever camera you're looking through at the time. And at the top on the left, you will see it says 1 overview just below measure topo. So you're in zoom level 1 using the overview camera, and as you zoom in, you start to see things changing. So now we're in the primary level camera, things start to become clearer, and then once we go into level 5, we're in the telecamera, which is coaxial, and this is the equivalent of looking through the instrument and moving things with manually in the field. But of course, we can zoom right in. Now at level 8, we can see a lot of heat haze today. It's a pretty warm day. We're looking at something though 200 meters away. So bear in mind that's a long way away, and with a normal instrument, you wouldn't be able to see that far. I mentioned taking photos for colorizing the point clouds. You can take panoramas for that, or just for site documentation if you want to. You can do it either with the primary or the overview camera, and there's benefits to using either one. Overview, I would generally say, for 360 scans. Primary, if you're doing something like a structure or you're doing an elevation and you want better photos to either use as a guide when you're drawing it up or to measure from. You can also get a bit more clever with the cameras. This is a primary image. It looks a bit grainy. It was 260 meters away or thereabouts, and it was pouring rain, so it's a bit grainy. So I took some photos as well with the telescopic camera, and if you zoom in, you can see the points over the image, which is the scan. You know, we did a superfine scan on this, took a couple of minutes. We're getting points of about 25 mil between point spacing between the points. So that might be good enough, it might not. For this purpose, we'll say it isn't, and we want to take more measurements. So what we can do, we can click on a point. We see this little box down at the bottom here, virtual DR. We can click on one of the points from the cloud to take a depth measurement, and then if we've got virtual DR ticked, it will bring up this little pixel picker, and we can finally pick which pixel we want, which will give us our angular measurement essentially, because these are all calibrated images that we're taking with the SX10. So there we go, we've created a new point there. And it's very useful, especially at long range stuff, or when the laser scan is, you know, the points between the laser scanner are a little bit sparse, or if you haven't got a window corner, that type of thing. This example is 450 meters away, so it just gives you an idea. Now I mentioned the camera plummet, very useful in the field, very accurate for centering over a known point, but we can also do this, create site documentation, whereby it will store all of that information just as soon as we've leveled up the instrument. All of that's taken automatically. When you put in your target height for the instrument, it will stamp all of that information on a nice little report there, which a lot of people really like. Just to touch on searching for a known target, of course you can still physically ask the instrument to do a physical search, and it will go away and look for you, but I never do that anymore with the SX10. You've always got the camera on your screen, so you can just tap the prism or somewhere near the prism and it will just snap onto you. It's much faster. I mentioned GPS earlier on, and working with integrated survey, we would call this. Trimble have had this on board our instruments for a long time. So you can, as you see there in the picture, you can have your GPS set up on top of your prism. You can be connected to both at the same time with your data logger, and then you just flip between the two. So if you're doing a traverse, you can do your hard detail with your prism, walk around the corner, you lose line of sight for your total station, and you can flip over to the GPS if you've got maybe some spot levels to take or something like that. With the SX10, you can go a little bit further than that. As an example, you could set it up scanning. You could do a 360 scan or elevation or something like that, and then move over to GPS and be in your GPS measurement screen, go off taking some measurements while the SX10 is scanning in the background. So you're really multitasking and working very efficiently in the field. So we'll move on to looking at some real world case scenarios. So this is a really nice project for looking at a new building construction, in particular the steel they were looking at here. As you see, it's a 6-station traverse around the structure here, and a resection inside as well to capture the information inside the structure. And what we did is we did some polygon scans around the structure, so they were sort of 4 minutes each, I believe, roughly at the size of that structure, and we were getting somewhere around 7 mil between the points, something more than enough detail anyway. Time in the field, as well as training a new customer, new to Trimble in this case. We also did topographic work with the prism in the field. It took about 4 hours to do this. Time in the office was extremely quick. No registration because this is forming part of a traverse. So 3 minutes to import and colorize the data. 1 minute in Trimble RealWorks to classify the cloud. Now, if you look at this image at the bottom here with the structure colored blue, what we ask the software to do is to find from the point cloud the structure and the ground and the high vegetation, and this is what it did in 1 minute. Now, it would take you a lot longer than that if you were manually separating the building from the rest of the point cloud. So that was a really good use of the software there. And then it took the client in this case a few hours, I would say, to model every inch of that steelwork, and they did that, and they were, as I said, completely new to Trimble, so a really good result, and they were very happy, very low millimeter results for this, and they actually bought an SX10 following this site trial in this case. Moving on to structures, I've got a nice little data set here, which is a great example for structures, and a bit of nostalgia for me. I did measure the swing bridge many years ago, probably 10 to 15 years ago now. It took me all day, and after, well, best part of the day, and I only got one elevation and possibly one elevation of the swing bridge and maybe a few hundred points. Well, what you see here on the right is the result of 2 hours, less than 2 hours work with the SX10. So it's quite incredible. So what I did, 3 stations, station 3, 1, 2 and 3, various resection points on the surrounding objects to do multi-point resections, multiple different scans. We did sort of 360 scans to capture everything, and then more dense scans on the structures in question, primarily the swing bridge, but we also captured the other bridges and a lot of the buildings along the banks, and all that stuff. And as I said, site time was less than 2 hours. Time in the office again, 2 minutes. That's all to import and colorize the data, because the data, is packed down in a very small package. No registration needed. And you can see the sort of the quality of the data we're able to get here from the key side. And then, yeah, just for a bit of fun, really, drew up a very basic elevation in a short amount of time. An example of an integrated survey is perhaps this one. This is a mock crash scene for the police, and with this one we measured using GPS robotically. We took some line work as well, and we also, of course, did some scanning. Now, this is a good example of multitasking, because we set the scanner scanning away, scanning the car and the evidence around the car, let's say. And while it was doing that, we went away and measured some of the curb lines and the center points of the road, the white lines, things like that, with the GPS to keep the time down. Essentially, the police they need this for collision investigation, and their primary function really is to open the road as quickly as possible, so it needs to be done. So this is 3 setups around the car, lots and lots of data, lots of good photos for evidence and things like that. Less than an hour this took, and again a couple of minutes to import and colorize the data, no registration, and in this case, depending on how much perfectionist you are, this is just thrown into Trimble Business Centre. 15 to 30 minutes, I would say, to come out with this line drawing. An example of a slightly larger topographic survey. Once again, in this case, we were using the SX10, a variety of 360 horizontal band scans as we went round the dock here. And also some area scans of the pontoons because they wanted slightly better information, slightly more dense information on the pontoons. Primary control was already established here, and they put some tripods down in the morning, which we tied into through a series of resections. But yeah, 10 station setups, several scans, maybe 15, 16 scans in total, as well as quite a lot of topographic line work on measured robotically around the periphery of the docks. So it took about 5 minutes, 5 hours on site, and a few minutes in the office to import and colorize the data. And the cloud was all they really took away from this one, but a good example. So pretty much that's the last project I'll talk about. I'll just very quickly touch on some other application areas. Monitoring, the SX10 is a really, really good monitoring tool, whether that be a single point. It's very comfortable and easy to measure single point with a tablet in the field. You know, if you've got retros on a wall, or if you've put prisms up, it's very nice. Or if you're comparing scan to other scans or scan to models, things like that. Again, the SX10, because you can tie in directly to survey control, you don't have to tie back to scan control or something like that. It's a very flexible system to use. Conditioning surveys, you can see the photos really come into their own here, and again, not just a pretty picture, we can measure from those photos if we want to. Roads with the long baselines, the great distances we can achieve, and also power lines. For exactly the same reason, people have recorded great time savings using SX10 for power line surveys over traditional methods or scanning as well. So there's a lot of different functions we can do. So that's pretty much it from me. Thank you very much. We say really one box, one investment really with the SX10, and it really is. You really no longer need a total station and a scanner for a lot of jobs. You know, perhaps if you're doing an internal survey, a scanner would still be quicker for you, but for a great amount of work, the SX10 is all you really need. You know, you can manage all your jobs in the field very comfortably with, you know, polygon scans, 360 scans. You don't need to register. It's a very small data size, so the speed is very good. And as we say, you know, you can take on a wide variety of different jobs. The spec of the SX10, it can do pretty much, you know, anything really, almost. And really, we're seeing that, you know, from the customers who are buying the SX10. I thought, to begin with, when it first came out, after a bit of playing with it, I thought it would be very popular with sort of one-man band, smaller operations that wanted a tool that could do everything, or civil contractors, again, who do a wide variety of things, and perhaps larger survey companies that are well set up for scanning, and they have maybe a topo team and a scanning team, may not be quite so interested with the SX10. Well, that's not even proving true either, because we've got a lot of companies out there who are going for the SX10. So yeah, it's very popular with a variety of people. So pricing, we're often told we never give out pricing, so I thought I'd better give out pricing today. The SX10 with all of those bits there, and either TBC with the photogrammetry and scanning modules inbuilt, or with RealWorks, depending on what you're doing, is approximately £45,000, depending on software options. The introductory price, which will be ending very soon, around the end of August brings that down to about £41,000, just as an idea. And as you know, Korec is 50 years old this year, so it's not just SX10 introductory prices. We have offers on through the summer on pretty much the majority of our kit, to be honest. So yeah, just that's it. Thank you for listening to me. It was a fairly brief presentation. I wanted to keep it fairly brief. Lots more information online, of course, or feel free to contact me directly and I'll be happy to help. And now I think we'll go into some questions.
Thank you very much, Chris. What we're just going to do now is just review the questions that are coming through. If you have any questions, just in the session panel, there is a question tab. If you have any further questions you would like to ask after this webinar, Chris will be happy to answer it, and we'll circulate his details through. Okay, a question that's been submitted by Mike. What is the ROI?
Well, I would say the return on investment with the SX10 is very strong, because you can apply it to, I guess, a wide variety of different jobs. The ROI is probably better than a scanner, because as we showed at the beginning, you know, if you have a scanner, no matter how much scanning work you think you might get, you're probably never going to have a scanning job to do every day. Perhaps, I don't know. But with the SX10, of course, you can apply it to anything, scanning or traditional topographic stuff, monitoring, etc., etc. So it really, you know, it just depends on the business that you do. And I know, Mike, you might do a variety of things and structures and things like that. So I would say it would be pretty good.
Okay, thank you. There's a question submitted by Amanda. In your opinion, is it better than a scanner?
Well, again, it sort of depends on what you're doing. If you're doing an internal building survey, you would prefer a dedicated scanner, because you will do 360 full dome scans time after time after time, and there'll be dozens of them as you traverse through a building. So doing that, let's compare a TX8. It will do a 360 in 1 or 2 minutes, whereas full dome over the top, an SX10 will take 11 minutes. So it would obviously be much slower. But if you're doing a topographic survey, or if you want elevations, or if you want structures and you want to compare beams and things like that, or you want to scan the road to compare surfaces and concrete pours and things like that, then yes, I think it's the better tool to use. It's certainly more flexible to use in the field that way, and you can come directly off survey control. So more people can use it straight away. You know, some people have been perhaps a bit scared to use scanners if people are quite often concerned with computer power or specialist software or things like that. But with the SX10, you don't necessarily need to worry too much, because it's in a language that surveyors know and understand straight away.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from Amanda. She says, what is the lead time? I've heard there is a long wait.
Yes, well, officially there is a long lead time with the SX10. I think officially it's up to something like 14 or 16 weeks now with Trimble, but Korec buy and have bought many units to try and beat that lead time, and I think the longest any customers had to wait is probably about 4 weeks. So I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Okay. Tim has asked a question. Well, will integrated GPS surveying be possible while scanning is undergoing, or will the T10 logger, TS3 logger, have to be used?
So you have to use the tablet if you're using the SX10. But if you look at my screen there, the little image, I've done integrated survey on this structure, and I'm using an R10. You can't see the tablet; it's probably on the bench, or I'm holding it. But I set up my control using the R10 GPS resection to position the SX10 in place. So you can't use your TSE3 with the SX10. It's not fast enough. We communicate with the SX10 via the tablet using Wi-Fi, because it's sending a huge amount of data over to the tablet, and the tablet has a better computing power, and it also has a bigger screen, which makes it more easy to use in the field when you're using your camera screens and all the rest of it. So you would need a tablet, but yes, absolutely, you can use the R10 in integrated mode, and while it's scanning, you can take measurements.
Okay, we've got a question from Patrick. I am more concerned about is that you were recommended what software to do for 3D modelling.
3D modelling. Okay, well, our general software that we would promote for 3D modelling would be Trimble RealWorks. But it really does depend on what you do. I mean, some people like to use SketchUp or Revit, or a wide variety of softwares, really. But from our generic software, TBC or RealWorks, we can export out the cloud in a wide variety of different formats directly to ReCap for Revit, or in an E57 or a LAS format or a PTS format or something like that. So it really is down to which software you prefer to use, to be fair. But RealWorks is a nice software to use. And that example I gave with the steel frame building, that was a new customer who was new to Trimble, new to using Trimble RealWorks, and they did an exceptional job, in fairness, as a new user, but they modelled that whole complete building from scratch with very little training beforehand, so it can be done.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question from David. He's saying, do we hire out the SX10?
Yes, we do. We don't have a huge amount of SX10s on the fleet, so give us a bit of notice, but yes, we do. It's £1,000 a week to hire out the SX10.
Okay, thank you. Got a question from Nathan. Would you arrange any hands-on events and sessions?
Okay, Nathan, thank you. Yes, I'm sure we could definitely look to do that. We did a series of them earlier in the year, and they went very well, so perhaps we might do some more. Although, of course, we can always arrange directly with yourself to bring an SX10 over, so maybe we'll drop you an email afterwards and arrange that.
Yes, certainly. We are looking at some further kind of lunch and learn sessions throughout the UK, and by all means, we'll send you some details, Nathan, and invites, and yeah, we'll have the SX10 definitely down there. We've got a question from Simon. Will it integrate easy into other software, or must it go through the Trimble software first every time?
Yes, it's got to be downloaded into. You could just download it into the TBC base software, so it's pretty much a free software. But it has to go through that. The raw format will not be accepted by many, any piece of software that I'm aware of that aren't Trimble. But if you want to, you can just literally bring it into TBC, convert it from raw, and straight out as a LAS or an E57 or a common data format that another software will understand.
Okay, thank you. We've got a question from Kevin. Is it possible to carry out a level traverse for station controls with the SX10, a job that would traditionally be done with a laser level?
Precise leveling, no. You would still want to precise level your traverse. Treat it as a total station. You can do a traverse with it, absolutely. But if you want precise levels on there, then you can adjust. Then you can level it and adjust your traverse in the office afterwards. And when you adjust your traverse in the office afterwards, then the scan information or your line work will be adjusted accordingly. It doesn't just adjust the topographic stuff, it's all the scan is corrected as well.
Okay, the next question is, what is your experience on scanning wet surfaces such as roads?
Dark tarmac when it's wet, laser scanners don't like. The Trimble scanners are pretty heavy on filtering noise, so we don't have noisy point clouds, which is nice because we can rely on the data that we're picking up and we don't have to do any sort of post filtering or anything like that. But of course the payoff for that is that data that it's not happy with, which is wet data, generally black surfaces, glossy surfaces, things like that, it will get limited data. So on a dry road you'll be absolutely fine. On a wet road you might be okay. On a wet, very black road, if you've got a particular sort of a skinny angle to it in particular, you will get limited data. You will see that it will get the white lines and things like that, but the very dark surface, if it's wet, it won't like it. So it's a common feature with a laser scanner, and the SX10 really is no different.
Okay, so we've got a question from Brian who's saying, how does the pricing compare to competitive products in the market?
Well, firstly, Brian, thank you. I would say there is no competitive product to the SX10. There are similar systems if you consider a multi-sensor systems. Our VX was the first in 2007 that incorporated cameras and light scanning functionality. Topcon then bought a system out several years later, and then Leica bought one out at the MS50, I think in around 2012, 2013, something like that. But I wouldn't say it's a competitive product because it's not really a laser scanner. You know, this is capable of doing 360 scans in a matter of minutes, and nothing else is really. And when you look at the operation and the photos and all the rest of it. But if you compare it to something like that, I think it compares very well. I think it's about the same, or possibly slightly cheaper that I'm being told, but somewhere around the area anyway. So when you look at that, the SX10 is a very, very good buy in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. We've got a question from Simon. Does the Trimble software have inbuilt beam, pipework, sizing, recognition?
Yes, it does. It will find various types of steel structure, beams, etc., etc., and you can upload catalogs and things like that. And then it depends how much you want to go into it and how specific your sites are. You may prefer to go for a more specialized software, and Trimble do more specialized pipe modeling softwares as well. But yes, RealWorks does have that.
Okay, thank you for that. We've got a question from Nathan. In regards to the Trimble BC software, how easy is it to migrate to other software, hardware, such as Leica and Autodesk?
Easy is the answer. You can export out in a multitude of different formats, so Leica software or Autodesk software will understand it. TBC will also import raw files from a lot of competitive instruments such as Leica, so you can bring in a lot of that data into TBC if you prefer to do it that way. But yeah, whether it be scan points or just traditional measured points, yes, you can bring it into any software really.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we've got a question here from Ewan. Okay, what he's saying here is you should also mention that the scan station option and register the point cloud in TBC. We found this very handy on site to scan a certain area without control.
Yes, okay, yes, that is a good point that I didn't mention. And what you're saying there basically is, yeah, if you've got no site control and you want to just treat it as a scanner, so a dumb sensor in the field with no coordinates, essentially, you can absolutely do that. You can treat the SX10 as a scanner, scan, and then bring it into TBC or RealWorks and do a cloud-to-cloud or a different type of registration. So, yes, that is a very handy way of working.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. So we've got a question, or not a question, a comment from Alfred in Cape Town here. Hi guys, this is a beautiful machine, but I love my TX8 scanner. RealWorks is very impressive with its registration and feature extractions.
Yes, well, it is. RealWorks, it has a lot of options now for registration. So yeah, I totally agree with you, Alfred. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so we've got another one here from Simon. We have a number of Spectra SP60 and SP80. Will these integrate instead of changing to an R10?
I'm not sure, Simon. I think they probably will. I know Access does speak to a number of different Spectra instruments now, both robotic and GPS. But I've not tested it, but I would imagine it probably does work.
Okay, thank you for that. Question by David. Can you get the data into RWG format for use in AutoCAD?
Yes, yeah. Straight from TBC into, well, you could take it straight from a data logger as a DXF if you wanted to, but you wouldn't want to do a scan that way. But yes, from the raw file from the SX10, bring it into Trimble Business Center, and then you can export it out as a DWG.
Okay, thank you. So one from Simon. I have a number of highway scans to undertake as we are directly drilling beneath them. How realistic is it to use and work in rain?
Well, you can work in the rain absolutely fine. There's no problem about the IP rating or the sensitivity to rain, or even scanning in the rain. It won't show noise in the data or anything like that, but it will capture less data. So if you want the road surface, just bear in mind that, and keep your setups closer together, I would say, because it most likely will capture the road near you, but then as you go further away and the angle is tighter to the road, you will get less data. It depends how wet it is and how dark the tarmac is, that type of thing. If it's a concrete surface, you'll probably be fine. If it's very, very freshly laid asphalt, then you will struggle a lot more. So you'll need to consider that. But you're fine to do it.
Yes, because you mentioned about the crane application that was on a wet day.
Yeah, that was pouring wet, and it scanned it perfectly because it's sort of straight onto it. It was a wet surface, and it might have been a bit shiny, but it wasn't too bad. So yeah, that got it fine.
Okay, fantastic. So a question from Brian here. How much training is included with the SX10 full package?
What we probably normally say is for a Trimble user 1 day or a non-Trimble user 2 days as a general rule. But if you've got a particularly specialist niche area, then we might look at a bit longer. The pricing that I gave out before generally includes training, and we're not funny about it. You're buying an expensive piece of equipment, so if you need another morning or another full day, it's not a problem. We do compensate for that. So yeah, I was as a day or two, I would say, as a guide.
Okay, fantastic. We've got a question here. Can you improve the Wi-Fi range and drop signal?
So the SX10 uses two different types of data communication, and the Wi-Fi is one of them. And the Wi-Fi is essential for scanning. So you need to you need the Wi-Fi for it to send the scan data through quickly. The long-range radio will give you 800 meters of range, whereas your Wi-Fi gives you 100, 150, something like that, in good conditions. But what you can do is you can set the SX10 scanning and then walk away if you want. If you go out of Wi-Fi range, it doesn't matter, because it will store the points on board the SX10, and then when you come back into range, it will push forward the data when you've come back into Wi-Fi, and it picks it up again. So it doesn't matter. Essentially, you can use the two different data communications as you need them.
Fantastic. Okay, so Kevin's got a question here. Will rain affect photo quality and in turn the colorization of the point cloud?
Yes, it will. Yeah, the colorization of the point cloud is directly relates to the photo that you've taken, and there's lots of ways to try and improve the photos, fixing your exposures or setting certain various settings on board the cameras. Generally, I leave things in automatic mode. It sounds a bit lame, but it works well. Using them in the rain doesn't really affect them too much, unless you get a big blob of rain on the lens, of course. But it just might make the photo a little bit grainy, and you probably wouldn't notice it too much on the point cloud. It's more in the photos, but you can use the photos as well as the cloud. So yeah, the photos, and taking good quality photos is, comes with experience, really, I think, with the SX10.
Okay, thanks a lot. A question via David. If you want to carry out a typical topographical survey as well as a 3D scan, is the data collected separately altogether? Can the topographic data be shown in a 2D separately to the point cloud?
Yes, okay, so it's, thank you, David, for the question. It's all collected together, but it's coded differently and it's called separate things. So either on the logger or in the software afterwards, you can turn on or off whichever ones you want. Very useful in the field. After a scan, it will show you the scan information that you've collected, but then you can just make the scan invisible if you want to view the other measured data that you've either picked up or haven't picked up. So yeah, it's all collected, it's all in one file, but you can play around with it and turn things off.
Okay, fantastic for that. A question via Tim. When drawing elevations, is it possible to view the point cloud to the drawing, to draw over but not snap to the point? I can't currently draw on them regardless of cutting planes in 3D view or station view.
Yes, you can do that. Either in TBC or in RealWorks, I think you can do it without snapping onto the point. But yes, you would have to select a plane. We may just need to speak to you, Tim, on that one, and arrange a bit of training perhaps on how to do that. But yes, you can draw on it without snapping on points. That's not a problem.
Okay, thank you. That's the last of the questions. We'll probably hold on here for a couple of minutes just in case any more are coming through. It may be worth noting again that we are going to be doing some regional, local days, so we'll let everybody who has attended this webinar information on that. And like I say, we're able as well to come out and demonstrate these products and talk to you. If you do have an interesting application and you would like to see the SX10 work in real life, just contact us and we'll be happy to come out and demonstrate. Have we got any more coming through?
Here's one.
Okay, it's from Simon. Similar to a previous question, the raw data survey into ground modelling software, so I can still, so this can still be exported.
Ground modelling software. Yes, I'm sure it would maybe just depend on what format files that particular software needs, but TBC is very open with its exports. You can export in pretty much any format, to be fair. And the cloud, you can export the cloud in probably 10 different formats, so as well as all the normal sort of CSV and DXFs and DWGs and all that type of thing. So I'm sure that would be fine, Simon. If you maybe send me an email or something afterwards, and we'll talk about that further.
Okay, fantastic. I've got one more come through, again via Simon. How often does it have to be calibrated? Yearly, or does it let you know when it needs to be serviced?
A few questions there. Okay,
yeah.
That's fine. Yes, annual calibration we still recommend for the SX10. Now, the SX10, because of the sensitive nature of it, the amount of cameras, the scanner, etc., it needs to go back to the factory to be serviced and calibrated. So when we sell an SX10, generally we will sell it with a care package, and included in that care package is obviously the servicing and then a replacement instrument when yours is away for a service. So, you know, if it's taking a bit longer at the factory, it's not too much of a problem. Can it be inverted? It's possibly not recommended. I would probably have to check with Trimble about this, actually, but I know it can be done. And operating temperatures, I think, is -20 to +50 or thereabouts. But again, there will all be, if you have a look at the SX10 data sheet, they'll be on there. But it's a tough machine. It's not a bit soft like you might think a laser scanner is. Got some more.
Oh, some more have come through. Okay, we've got a question here. Is there an option to fit a tracking device similar to an S7?
So the locate to protect that's available in the S7 is not yet ready for the SX10, not available for the SX10. We do have a tracking device that goes into the box as an option, but it's a different technology to that of the S7.
Okay, we've got another question off Tim. Will a visible red laser dot for measuring points in low light be available with a firmware update later?
Thank you, Tim. Possibly, but I don't know about that, and we'll have to see what the future brings us. And generally, that's a good thing about Trimble. You know, they've done it with the TX8. When the TX8 was first released, it didn't have the sort of high precision mode, and it didn't have the pause and resume function and things like that. But Trimble, with a firmware update, made that all possible, so you didn't have to buy a whole new unit. So what you've mentioned there is something that perhaps could come later with the SX10, and that could definitely be maybe a firmware update.
Okay, thank you. We've got a question here off Kevin. At what station setup spacing would you recommend when topo surveying a large flat area such as a playing pitch?
Well, it's up to you, really. I mean, it's a total station, treat it as that. So if you want a nice long baseline, then you go for it. You don't need to be close from a scanning perspective, and if you're a long way away from what you want to scan, all you do is just select a smaller polygon and take a fine or a super fine laser scan. So it's extremely flexible for things like that. It makes it much more of a nice prospect than using a laser scanner for long range stuff like that. So yeah, if you want long baselines, you can definitely do that.
Okay, you've got a question here. What is the battery life in scanning and robotic?
So it uses the same type of batteries as our S-series total stations, and in the S-series you would get about 6 hours of life out of a single battery. With the SX10 it's much heavier on the batteries, and you would probably expect 3 hours, and that would be assuming you're scanning pretty much the whole of those 3 hours. So it's roughly half the life, so just bear in mind. You get 3 batteries with the kit typically, some people ask for more, so and you can still have your battery extender on the tripod if you're at a station for any very long period of time. But yeah, generally three hours instead of the 6.
Okay, fantastic. We've got a question of Brian. Is the tablet capable of handling the weather conditions as well as the scanning total station?
Yes, the tablet is IP. I would need to check, but it's at least as weatherproof as the SX10 is.
Okay, fantastic. Is there any more, guys? We'll keep this going for a minute longer. And thank you for joining us.
And thank you for all the questions. It's nice to see some real interest with the SX10.
Yeah, it's not often you do a webinar and you get some really good questions.
No, absolutely.
And we are recording this session as well, so we will be circulating that afterwards. I think that's roughly about it, would you say?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us. Oh, there's one more. What is your favourite feature of the SX10?
Oh God, I don't know. The flexibility is not really answering you, but it's the flexibility of the machine. I mean, the camera operation probably, if I were to pinpoint one thing, it really does spoil you for using. I wouldn't want to say that as Nest series, but it does spoil you for using anything else once you've used the SX10. It's a really nice way of working in the field.
And thank you, Tim, for your comment. He said, thank you for the webinar, time to go scanning.
Good for you, Tim.
Okay, brilliant. Well, we'll call it a day now, but like I say, if there are any further questions you have, we'll be happy to answer those. Just email them across. Like I say, I mean, we'll keep in touch, and this the recording of this webinar will be sent over to you. And if at any time you would like to have a demonstration, I'm quite happy. Both Chris and the other team members would be happy to come out.
Absolutely.
And if you also have any technical questions, Korec also have quite a large team of support guys who will be also happy to help at any time. Just basically give us a ring or send us an email. Okay, well, we'll wrap it up now, and thank you very much for joining us. Again, my name is Ian Guest, and we've got Chris here, Chris Harris. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.